Just as a follow-up to what Rabbi Yudin said, our learning this morning, we limud schis and aliyah for the neshama of Mr. Bowski, who was a very, very important part of this community, the shul. In last week's parsha, Amor LeKohanim, it begins with the laws of Tuma and Tara. That a Kohen cannot be in a position where he is in proximation to a corpse, and you cannot, contaminate the kedusha of a Kohen by being in the presence of death. That's what Tuma is. It's not a physical ailment, it's a spiritual situation. And Kohanim are very, very careful about not being in a position where they could be in a place where there might be a dead person. And that's a type of tuma that a Kohen has to avoid. That's why Kohanim don't go to cemeteries. Kohanim don't go to hospitals, because very often there are dead people at a hospital. And they try to be very, very careful about it. One of the questions that was recently, with the invention of modern airfare, as you approach many airports, both in Israel and in Kennedy Airport as well, you fly over certain cemeteries on the way to land. If you are a Kohen sitting in an airplane flying over a cemetery, does that tuma extend to you? And it's a whole big halakhic discussion about that. And I have seen some very, how should I put it? I got mostly from the Hasidic community. There were people at one point who would wrap themselves in plastic in an airplane to avoid contacting tuma as it flew over an cemetery. It's a bit extreme, but there's a lot of discussion about, again, tuma goes up, and the cemetery is in the flight path of the airplane, so potentially it could be a problem. So there is some halakhic discussion on that. Suffice it to say that you don't have to wrap yourself in plastic because the airplane itself is self-contained, whatever. But there's another discussion that's much more prevalent, which applies to other people as well. If you are married to a Kohen, and if you're pregnant, and there's an opportunity or an occasion where you may have to go to a hospital or to a cemetery, is a pregnant woman married to a Kohen allowed to go to a cemetery or to a hospital? The possibility that she's carrying a male child, and you don't want the child to become tamei in utero, so to speak. It's an interesting question. Tumas Kohanim is a very, very serious issue. And the question is, when does this tumah begin? When does the fetus assume a status of a full-fledged Kohen? And to what extent does the mother carrying such a fetus have to be careful where she goes during pregnancy? Again, tuma is a very, very important issue for Kohanim, because today we're all in the category of tamei, one way or another, and we no longer have the para aduma to cleanse us of our tuma. Just going to the mikveh afterwards doesn't do it in terms of tumas kohanim. You have to have the ashes of the para aduma. There are, by the way, farms in Israel where they are growing. They have red heifers that they're very, very careful about because Mehera v'Yameinu, Mashiach will be here, and we'll have the base of Mikdash again, and it'll become a reality. And you need, and the afer of the parah lasts for a very, very long time, because you don't need very much of the ashes from an entire parah. It lasts for a long, long time. In any event, so what do these pregnant women have to do in terms of coming in contact with a dead body? So the original statement goes back to the Sefer Rokeach, talking the 12th, 13th century, where he says that a pregnant woman can come in contact with a corpse because of a sveka, a double suffix, a double doubt. Number one, maybe the fetus may not be viable. You don't know. Going back again, in the Middle Ages, they didn't have all these sonograms and all kinds of other things that you have today. Maybe the child may not.
Bring me a tissue when you come back, please.
Maybe the child may not be viable. And number two, you don't know if it's a male or a female. So it's a double suffix, the sveka, and therefore she may come in contact with a dead body. And the Shach quotes this in Yoredeya. Later on, other Rishonim talk about the fact that in their community, pregnant wives of Kohanim avoided going to cemeteries and avoided situations. However, other Rishonim say it's nonsense. I mean, it's not a Kohen, it's a fetus. And at that early stage, you don't know if it's viable or not either. So there are a number of it's a machlokas Rishonim basically, in terms of whether we accept the Rokeach or not. Today, however, let's jump way ahead to the 21st century. We can find out very, very early through a sonogram, through all types of ultrasound testing, very, very early on in your pregnancy, A, if it's viable, and B, if it's a male or a female. That being the case, do we rely on the sveka that originally Rokeach talked about, or since we can find out early on, we say wives of Kohanim who are pregnant just simply stay away from cemeteries and stay away from hospitals. The unanswered question, by the way, and I thought about, I don't have an answer to this. Unless women give birth at home, what do? I don't have an answer to that question. You're very careful not going to a cemetery and not going to funerals and staying away from places. But then when comes time to give birth, you're in a hospital.
Or something else. A pregnant woman may go to the hospital for some other ailment.
Well, but putting that aside, assuming she'll be healthy, but when she gives birth, she's in a hospital. All the cautions. So I didn't see that dealt with anywhere specifically in terms of giving birth. But she's in a hospital. Other issues before the invention of sonograms. The Magen Avram talks about whether or not the fetus is considered an independent entity or is it part of the mother? Is considered part of the mother or totally, which would have an implication for the halacha as well. Because if the fetus is not independent, it's part of the mother, then it can't become tamei in that regard as a kohen. The Avnei Miluim points out that an ubar, a fetus, is not part of the mother. It's an independent. And so you have a machlokas among Achronim as well as to what the status of this fetus is in terms of coming in contact with a source of tumor. And this is a real problem. In general, there are many minhagim about this. Many women who are pregnant simply just don't go to cemeteries, period, whether they're Kohanim or not. These are minhagim that are not based on the issue of tumas Kohanim or not. They just simply feel it's inappropriate or it might be wrong for whatever reason. There are different minhagim about that. The machlokes is not just a question of the sveka that the Rokeach talks about, but is the fetus of a pregnant woman a separate entity or is it part of the woman herself? And that also affects how we determine what the halacha is. Also, in mikveh, you have the notion of chatzitza. So there too, it's a fascinating question that since a woman serves as the life force for the child, so it's not considered necessarily a chatzitza, a separate entity, or something that gets in the way of being part of the mother. Whether Uber is yerech imo or not yerech imo, there's a tremendous machlokus. Yes.
If you shack the chicken and there are eggs in the chicken, the eggs are fleischiks.
Correct.
If you shack the cow and milk comes out after it was slaughtered, that milk is fleischiks.
Well, the cow that comes out is still fleishik, but it may not require shkita.
No, I said if you shack the cow and milk comes out after it was shechted.
Milk comes out afterwards.
That milk is considered fleischiks because it was in the cow when it was shechted. So that would seem to indicate that as long as the baby hasn't been born yet, it's part of the mother.
Okay, so again, this is the machlokas, where uber yerech imo, or lav yerech imo. And again, it's a machlokas haposkim that discuss this. Today, again, with all these machlokas, Rishonim and Acharonim, it's a moot point. Because today, we have the ability to know soon after conception, A, if the fetus is viable, and B, what the sex of that fetus is. As soon as a woman knows that she's pregnant, after, say, 2 months, 3 months at the most, we know right away whether the fetus is a male or a female. So being that that's the case, many contemporary poskim say that you take the sonogram or whatever type of test that you do, and in practical halacha, if it's a male child, then that woman does not go to a cemetery or a hospital. Yeah.
So, do any of the poskim today say to a woman who's pregnant that they should go for the sonogram?
Rav Shechter paskin that bisman hazeh, when you have sonograms, then
should you?
Yes, you have to. You have to. Sure, you do. Because if you're carrying a male child, then you don't want to subject that potentially male Kohen to tumor in utero.
So Shechter says that any pregnant woman should go for the
Yeah, because I mean, there are many leniencies, but given the fact that today, with our modern technology, we know right away the sex of the child, then we shouldn't rely on these kulos. That's Rav Shechter's psak. Others may have different opinions, because sometimes, for example, some poskim hold that ultrasound might involve a degree of risk, and the svek sveka still might be valid, even though it's efshur levrure in some cases. So there are some poskim who say you should not try to find out the gender of the child, so not to be proactive. So there are two schools of thought. Yes, you should find out as soon as you can to avoid tumor, or better not to know and avoid the problem altogether. So there are, again, this is a very contemporary discussion that is still going on. Yeah.
One question bothers me all the time. If a woman who is married not to a Kohen, but she is a Bas Kohen,
Yes.
what is her status?
She doesn't have that. The only thing that a Bas Kohen could, if she's not married, could eat truma. I mean, but there's no special.
Can she go to a cemetery?
Yeah.
Bas Kohen?
Yeah, why not? The halachas of Tuma only apply to a male Kohen, because the male Kohen is the one that served in the Beis Hamikdash. The women had no role. Yeah,
What if, in this day and age, there still are some young couples, I would assume, who really don't want to know the sex of the baby? I always thought that that's part of the whole excitement.
yes, of course,
Of like, you don't know what you're going to have.
absolutely.
And it sounds like Rav Schachter would say, too bad.
Well, because we're only talking about a wife of a Kohen.
I know. Well, there still are, I'm sure, unless once they marry a Kohen, they know it's gonna be this way.
Well,
Just don't go to the hospital or the cemetery, then you have no problem. Right, even for Rav Schachter,
yeah,
if you don't go to the hospital or to a cemetery, there,
no problem.
why should you have to go and get tested?
That's correct. So you could do that as well. Just stay away from hospitals and cemeteries. But again, the question that I raised in the beginning, I don't have an answer for. Ultimately, unless you give birth at home, you're going to wind up in a hospital. Now, again, you can find heterim because, does tumas ohel always apply in a hospital? Like I remember, again, tumas ohel means if you are in an enclosed area, then the tuma goes up and encompasses that entire enclosed area. So, for example, when I was a student at yeshiva, and every so often there would be a funeral of a Rosh Yeshiva who passed away, and for several hours before the funeral that took place in the auditorium of the yeshiva, there'd be boys going around to all the shiurim. The funeral is going to take place at 11:30. All kohanim, please be out of the building by then, because tumas ohel applies. So I would assume tumas ohel again. Are there kulos for tumas ohel? Maybe, but if you're in a hospital, the morgue is generally located in the basement. So there are several floors in between the morgue and the obstetric ward. So is there tumor for a bas kohen, for an Eshes kohen who gives birth in a hospital or not? I guess you could find kulos for it, to say that the tumas ohel may not apply, but in most cases it would apply. So that question is in no man's land, I would think. You have an answer for that?
Very often, hospitals want revolving doors.
Right.
That's it to say that. So between, let's say,
So there would be tumas ohel.
try.
All right. So how does a woman who's married to a Kohen give birth to a hospital without, having the vlad become tamei? It's a fascinating question. Yes.
No, Mendy was just asking, how does a Kohen go to a hospital if he's sick? Well, if he's sick, he's sick.
Well, a woman has to give birth, then she has to give birth. I mean,
So basically then, a Kohen could never be someone that works in a morgue. And then,
Well,
like,
I know of rabbis
yeah.
who are Kohanim. And it's very difficult because a rabbi can't visit congregants in a hospital if he's a Kohen. He also can't perform funerals if he's a Kohen. I mean, you can do it from the outside. They have rooms. Most funeral homes have a separate room or a separate area, the microphone, so the rabbi can give a hesped, but not be in the home itself. But I know a number of it genders a great. It's a problem for some congregants who, on the one hand, understand that the rabbi's a Kohen, but they feel bad that their rabbi can't visit them in the hospital. And sometimes there's resentment. I mean, I know it happens. It's a problem. But again, today, so just to summarize, if a wife of a Kohen is pregnant, l'chatchila, she should take a sonogram, as most people do anyway, early on to know if the child is male or female. she doesn't have to tell her husband necessarily, or anybody else for that matter. But if they find out the child is a male Kohen, that she should avoid going to a hospital or to funerals or to a cemetery. Given the fact that this is available today, if people don't have a sonogram, then you simply have to use common sense later on in the pregnancy, certainly not in the 9th month. Not everybody agrees that a woman in the 9th month definitely may not go to a cemetery or a hospital. Everybody agrees, assuming you haven't done a sonogram. Because by that, the 9th month, the child is viable, even after the 7th month. But this is a contemporary issue that women have to deal with. Today, as I said, Rav Schechter's idea of taking a sonogram early on would solve the whole problem right away. And again, it's sometimes difficult when you have a relative and you don't want to go, offend anybody, you feel strongly about going to a funeral, but there are other considerations. And b'meira yibara hamikdash, these will be real issues in terms of Tuma and Tahara. Kohanim still have to be very, very careful about Tuma and Tahara. We just had a funeral Erev Shabbos of a Kohen, and Kohanim are usually buried, near the edge of the cemetery, so people can stand in the road, not necessarily be in the cemetery. But the kedusha of Kohanim is very, very important to be maintained, especially since once the Beis Hamikdash is restored, they'll be back at work again.
Wally.
Yes. 1 second. Yes.
So there's no possibility once a person becomes tamei that he could become tahor again.
No, because in order to become tahor, you need the ashes of the red heifer, the paraduma, and we don't have the ashes. We don't have red heifers. We don't have the Beis Hamikdash. We have no way of burning the ashes of the red heifer to acquire this particular cure for tuma. So going to a mikveh just doesn't do it. Yeah.
2 things. One, I'm wondering, as you said, and I obviously I think everyone's aware of it, that a congregational rabbi who is a Kohen, I totally get it that some congregants are not happy about that in terms of visiting the hospital or a death or something like that. Would that be something to encourage Kohanim not to become congregational rabbis? And I just look a lot. You don't have to answer.
No, it's a very good question, but there are many things that rabbis do, many things, and visiting congregants is an important part of their job. But given the fact that there are many other good things that they're doing, it might overweigh that one particular chesaron, that lack.
That's true.
And there are a number of very, very fine rabbanim who happen to be kohanim. And
then it has to do with a baby, like who's already born, who's like maybe, I don't know, 7 months old. I actually know these people. The wife of a Kohen rabbi, and she was it's not in Fairmont, and she was in a ShopRite with this little boy, and she had a cart full of stuff, and she heard over the loudspeaker that there was a medical emergency in aisle whatever, and she didn't know what the status was.
Correct.
And so she immediately called her husband, the rabbi, the Kohen, and said, "What should I do? Do I get him out of the supermarket?" And her husband said, "Absolutely."
Yeah, sure.
And she was already almost about to unload her groceries onto the thing at the cashier.
Leave the groceries and get out of there.
"I'm really, really sorry. I have to leave immediately." And the cashier said, "Well, do you want me to hold up?" "No, I won't be able to come back really soon. I'm really, really sorry, but I have to go now." And I went, "Oh, like I'd never heard a story like that. I guess I don't hang around enough Kohanim or something."
But this is the I guess the price of being a Kohen, to maintain your kedusha. That's what you have to do, and you never know. You could be shopping in a supermarket. You could be in any enclosed area.
And she told me also when they fly to Israel, I don't remember whether it's Kennedy or Newark. There's one airport, one of those, they don't take a deceased person for burial in Israel. So they can only fly, I forget which airport. Because
Kennedy.
They fly out of Kennedy.
They fly out of Kennedy. From Kennedy,
Right.
Wally,
Yes.
so Kohanim do not become doctors.
It's a fascinating question. So, can Kohanim become doctors? Rav Schechter is very opposed to Kohanim going to medical school because and I remember when I was in Rav Tendler's shiur, Alav Shalom, he said, if any of you are medical students, non-Kohanim, when you're in your anatomy, and in those days, they actually cut up cadavers in anatomy. Today, it's all by a computer, and some of these computers are better than an actual corpse because they see everything. But in those days, you used to cut up corpses in anatomy. He said, to avoid the issue of nivel hames, of desecrating a dead body, make sure your lab partner is not Jewish, and he makes the first incision to avoid that problem. But Rav Schechter has said very often he discourages boys who are Kohanim from becoming doctors because of the issues involved in being around cadavers in medical school and also being in hospitals all the time. It's a serious issue. If a doctor is a Kohen, it's very problematic in terms of Tuma and Tara. And a more fascinating question, and we'll close with this. Let's assume, for argument's sake, that a Kohen becomes a doctor. And he is, again, he's in the proximity of death very frequently. B'mheira yibana hamikdash. So this doctor, before he can serve in the Beis Hamikdash, has to go through a whole process of tahara. And we have to wait until the Parah Aduma is slaughtered and the ashes, because, and then a second question, if he knew he was a Kohen and he became a doctor anyway, is he allowed to become a Kohen in the new Beis Hamikdash? That's a separate issue. But these are practical issues. So just in summation, if a woman is married to a Kohen and is pregnant, the sonogram should be taken early on to know if the fetus is male or not, and if it's a male, to avoid hospitals and cemeteries or funerals. And also, if you are a Kohen, it's very problematic to be a doctor because you're surrounded by death. Or going. If you're a rabbi who's a Kohen, you can't go into a hospital. These are serious issues. Again, there are some people who want to say that Tumas Ohel may not apply because the morgue is at the basement and there are floors in between. That's a whole separate issue of Tuma and Tara as to what's the nature of Tumas Ohel. Does it extend to the entire building or only to that floor? Can Tuma creep up the staircase? There's fascinating questions in an area that I'm not prepared to get into right now.
So a Kohen shouldn't volunteer for Hatzalah.
A Kohen should not volunteer for Hatzalah. That is correct. There are many zechuyos of being a Kohen, but there are certain limitations as well. And a Kohen has to be, being a Kohen, until the Beis Hamikdash is here, you have to be very careful about maintaining your particular status. And that means avoiding situations that might compromise your status as a Kohen. Hatzalah, hospital visits, Bikur Cholim, these type of things.
No one in Zakah in Israel is a Kohen.
Yeah, Zakah, I mean, you can't be a member of the Chevra Kadisha. I mean, there are limitations that you simply, as a Kohen, you have a certain status. That even though we don't have the Beis Hamikdash yet, and even though we don't have a way of purifying a Kohen from any type of tumah that he might encounter, nevertheless, a Kohen still has a certain status, and we have to maintain that to the extent that it's possible to do so. But these are fascinating questions.
So it applies Chutz La'aretz.
Absolutely. Chutz La'aretz, no matter where you are. a Kohen is a Kohen. You can't, you can't get away from that. You're born with it. Okay,
Imagine if you could invent a red
no other
cow.
questions? Have a great day out there.
Okay, Wally,
Yes,
when they burnt the paraduma, didn't
Yeah.
they have to mix in ash from the previous one?
I don't think so. But a paraduma would last for a very, very long time. Because it's a big animal and you have a lot of ashes, and a little bit of ash in the water is sufficient. So it lasts for a very, very long time. I don't know, I think it's 100 years, 400 years, depending on how many ashes you have. It doesn't say how many ashes you have to mix to have the potion that you sprinkle on the Kohen. But a paraduma lasts for a very, very long time. Not only because it's a big animal, but because you don't have too many of them. You can't have a single hair that isn't red. And it's very hard to find that. But there are a couple of farms in Israel where under Hashgacha, where they're trying to grow para aduma to be ready. As soon as the base of Mikdash is here, we're ready. Okay. Yes.
What about driving past the cemetery and there's trees growing? Like, are you supposed to avoid it if you're?
Well, driving past a cemetery isn't a problem. Driving over a cemetery might be a problem.
So, like, if there's a Kohen passenger in your car, you could go like.
Take a detour.
Like to first even there, so.
Again, you can argue that if the windows of the door are closed, then the car, so you can, you can play around with it. But it's the problem of the planes flying over a cemetery or a car going over a cemetery to overpass. These are issues that Kohanim have to be sensitive to. No, if a Kohen can't, I mean, unless you're a patient, the Kohen can't be in a hospital. It's because there are, unfortunately, people who pass away in a hospital and they're kept in the basement someplace until they can be taken to a funeral home. So it's there. Emergency room, people die all the time. Okay, who's benching?
Thank you, Wally.
Thank you,
Good
Rabbi.
day.
Regards to everybody.
Hi, Yanis.
Hi.
Yishem Adonai Baruch Me'atov Yad Olam. Baruch Shekal Mishalot Tavot Chayinu. Who knows in left Yes. Cleaning up my benches last night.
I said, I love that.
That's my granddaughter's.
Oh, I said, I love that, your place card is there. You have your place card for one of the
Over
meetings.
Oh, yeah, it's also.
That's, so